3 days later, both ships limped into Frontier Station 7. The massive space station hung in orbit around a red dwarf star, its lights twinkling like a small city in space. It was one of the newest stations on the edge of human territory. Built to serve the growing frontier colonies, the station's docking control was surprised to see a human cargo ship towing an unknown alien vessel. Iron Horse, this is station control. Please identify the ship you are escorting. Station control. This is Captain Jake Morrison. We have 12 Zephyrian survivors aboard the vessel's Silent Wing. They need emergency repairs and medical attention. Word of the rescue spread quickly through the station. Within hours, news crews and diplomats were arriving from across the sector. The rescue of a Zephyrian exploration ship by a human cargo freighter was the kind of story that made headlines across the galaxy. Veltar stood in the Iron Horse's small dining area, sharing a meal with Jake's crew. The Zephyrian commander looked strange sitting at the metal table, her tall frame folded into a chair designed for humans. But she seemed comfortable among her rescuers. "This food is interesting," she said, trying a bite of Sam's homemade stew. "Very different from our nutrition supplements." "Sam is the best cook in the merchant fleet," Danny said. "Even when he only has basic ingredients to work with." Sam smiled. "You learn to make do with what you have when you spend months at a time." In space, Veltar looked around the small dining area. The walls were covered with pictures of planets, space stations, and people the crew had met during their travels. Everything was practical and comfortable, but simple. It was so different from the elegant efficiency of Zephyrian ships. "Your ship feels alive," she said, "like it has a soul." "She does have a soul," Jake replied. "Every ship does, if you treat her right. The Iron Horse has been taking care of people for 40 years. She knows her job." Crixon floated through the doorway in his wheelchair. The old engineer had been injured during the quantum drive explosion and would need surgery to repair the damage to his legs. But he was alive, and that was what mattered. "Danny, I have been studying your repair." "Work," he said. "By all the laws of physics and engineering, it should not have worked. The power frequencies were incompatible. The connection protocols were completely different." "How did you know it would function?" Danny shrugged. "I did not know, but I knew. We had to try something. Sometimes you have to break the rules to save lives. Your people have a saying," Veltar said. "Necessity is the mother of invention." "I am beginning to understand what that means." Lisa looked up from her navigation charts. "Commander, can I ask you something? Why were you so surprised that we came to help you? I mean, you sent a distress call." The towing attempt had been working for 3 hours when Lisa's sensors detected something that made her blood run cold. "Jake, we have a problem. Big problem." On the main screen, what looked like a wall of rocks was drifting toward them. The asteroid field stretched in all directions, thousands of chunks of stone and metal tumbling through space. Some were as small as cars, others were as big as buildings. "Where did that come from?" Jake asked. "It must be debris from whatever caused the gravity storm that damaged their ship," Lisa replied. "The same forces that wrecked their quantum drive pulled this asteroid field out of its normal orbit." Commander Veltar's voice came through the communication system. "Iron Horse, we see the obstacle. Our sensors show the field is too dense to navigate safely. We should wait for it to pass." "How long would that take?" Jake asked. There was a pause while the Zephyrian computers calculated. "Approximately 47 hours at current speed." Danny's voice came from the Silent Wing's engine room. "Jake, we do not have 47 hours. The power connections I rigged are not designed for long-term use. The systems are already starting to overload. We have maybe 12 hours before something critical fails." Jake stared at the asteroid field on his screen. The rocks were moving in chaotic patterns, bouncing off each other and changing direction unpredictably. Flying through it would be like trying to thread a needle while riding a roller coaster. Lisa, what do you think? Can we make it through? Lisa studied her instruments for several long minutes. Maybe, if we had perfect sensors, perfect engines, and perfect luck. But Jake, one mistake and both ships get crushed. The Iron Horse's sensors are not precise enough for this kind of navigation, Veltar said. Our sensors are better, but our ship cannot maneuver. This is impossible. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. Danny was still on the alien ship, but Sam and Lisa were watching him, waiting for his decision. He thought about the easy choice. They could shut down the towing operation, transfer the Zephyrian crew to the Iron Horse, and let the Silent Wing drift until a proper rescue ship arrived. But that would mean abandoning the beautiful alien ship to the asteroid field. It would mean giving up when people were counting on him. Jake had never given up before, and he was not going to start now. Danny, can you tie our navigation systems together? What do you mean? I mean, use their sensors to guide our ship through the field. There was silence on the communication channel. Then Crixon's voice came through. That is actually possible. If we link our sensor data to your helm control, your pilot could see what we see. But there would be a delay, Danny added. The signal would take almost a full second to travel between ships. At the speeds we need to fly, that delay could kill us. Lisa was already working at her station. Not if I fly by instinct instead of instruments. Jake, this is crazy, but it might work. Their sensors can show me where the asteroids are, and I can feel where the ship needs to go. Feel it? Veltar asked. It is hard to explain, Lisa replied. When you have been flying as long as I have, the ship becomes part of you. You know how she will move before you even give the command. Danny and Crixon worked frantically to create a connection between the two ship systems. It was another impossible jury-rigged solution that should not work, but somehow did. Soon, Lisa's displays were showing her a three-dimensional map of the asteroid field updated in real time by Zephyrian sensors. Jake, we need to reduce our mass, Danny said. The Iron Horse is already straining to pull the Silent Wing. If we hit any turbulence in there, the stress could tear both ships apart. What do you suggest? Dump everything we do not absolutely need. Cargo, spare parts, even furniture. Every kilogram we lose makes us more maneuverable. For the next hour, both crews worked to lighten their ships. The Iron Horse's cargo bay doors opened and crates of supplies drifted out into space. It hurt Jake to waste the medical supplies the colonists needed, but keeping the crews alive was more important. The Zephyrians were shocked to see humans throw away valuable cargo. Their culture valued efficiency and careful resource management. The idea of deliberately wasting supplies seemed wrong to them. Your people are strange, Crixon told Danny. You risk your lives for strangers. You break your own rules to help others, and now you throw away valuable cargo. Why? Danny thought about it while he secured the last of the towing cables. Because things can be replaced, people cannot. When everything was ready, Jake gave the order to enter the asteroid field. The Iron Horse's engines roared to full power, pulling both ships toward the wall of tumbling rocks. Lisa gripped her flight controls and watched the sensor display with intense concentration. The first asteroids rushed past them like bullets. She twisted the ship left to avoid a chunk of metal, then dove down to miss a rock the size of a house. Tow cable stress is at 60%, Danny reported, still within safe limits. The deeper they went into the field, the more dangerous it became. The asteroids were packed closer together, and they were moving faster. Lisa had to make split-second decisions, turning the ship into gaps that looked too narrow for two ships to fit through. Stress at 80%, Danny called out. A massive asteroid tumbled directly toward them. Lisa pulled the iron horse into a steep climb, but the silent wing could not follow as quickly. The tow cables stretched tight and groaned under the strain. 95%. The cables are going to snap. At the last second, the asteroid passed below them, close enough that its gravity field shook both ships. The cables held, but barely. Good. Flying, Veltar said quietly. I have never seen piloting like this. They were halfway through the field when disaster struck. A small asteroid, no bigger than a refrigerator, bounced off a larger rock and came spinning directly at the iron horse. Lisa saw it coming, but had nowhere to go. They were trapped between bigger asteroids on all sides. Brace for impact. Jake shouted. The rock hit the iron horse's hull with a sound like thunder. Alarms started screaming as air rushed out through the hole in the ship's side. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing off the damaged section. Hull breach in Section 7, Sam reported. No casualties, but we lost some of our power reserves. I can compensate, Lisa said through gritted teeth. She was flying on pure instinct now, her hands moving across the controls without conscious thought. The ship danced between the asteroids like it was alive. 30 minutes later, they broke free of the asteroid field and into clear space. The iron horse's engines were overheating, and the tow cables were stretched beyond their design limits. But both ships were intact. We made it, Danny said in amazement. I cannot believe what I just witnessed, Veltar said. Your pilot navigated through an impossible obstacle using only instinct and courage. Our best computers said it could not be done. Lisa slumped back in her chair, exhausted. Sometimes you have to ignore what the computers say and trust your gut. Jake looked at his damaged ship and his tired crew. The Iron Horse had been through hell, but she had done her job. More importantly, they had all done their job. No one had given up, and no one had been left behind. Set course for the nearest space station, he ordered. Both ships need proper repairs, and our new friends need to get home. As they flew away from the asteroid field, Jake realized that something had changed. The Zephyrians were looking at humans differently now. They had seen that advanced technology was not always the answer. Sometimes the best solutions came from determination, creativity, and the willingness to risk everything for others. The rescue was almost over, but Jake had a feeling that the friendship between humans and Zephyrians was just beginning. Danny Torres floated in his spacesuit beside the Silent Wing's hull, looking for a way inside. The alien ship was even more impressive up close. The metal seemed to flow like water, and there were patterns in the surface that hurt his eyes too. Look at directly. He had never seen anything like it. Jake, I found what looks like an airlock, Danny said into his radio. But I have no idea how to open it. Back on the Iron Horse, Lisa had finally managed to establish better communication with the aliens. The computer was slowly learning their language by comparing words and sounds. It was not perfect, but they could understand each other enough to work together. Tell them we need to get aboard their ship, Jake said to Lisa. Lisa spoke into the communicator, using the few alien words the computer had figured out. A minute later, the airlock on the Silent Wing opened with a soft hiss. Danny floated inside and found himself in a chamber that seemed to be made of living crystal. Everything glowed with soft blue light, and the walls seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. This is incredible, he whispered. A tall alien appeared at the inner door of the airlock. Danny had seen pictures of different alien species, but never a Zephyrian. The being was humanoid, but taller and thinner than a human. His skin was deep, blue with purple markings that seemed to move and shift. His eyes were larger than human eyes and completely black. I am Crixon, the alien said in broken English. The computer had been teaching both sides basic words from each other's languages. Chief engineer. Danny Torres, Danny replied. Also an engineer. We are here to help. Crixon led Danny through corridors that seemed to bend and twist in impossible ways. The walls were covered with displays showing information in flowing alien script. Most of the displays were dark or flashing red warning symbols. "Your ship is beautiful," Danny said as they walked. Crixon made a sound that might have been a laugh, but it sounded sad. "Beautiful, but broken. Our quantum drive exploded. Everything connected to it is damaged. We cannot repair it." They reached the engine room, and Danny stopped in amazement. The quantum drive looked like a giant flower made of crystal and light. Or at least it had once. Now it was shattered and dark, with pieces scattered across the floor. The destruction was complete. "How? Does it work?" Danny asked. "Worked," Crixon corrected. "It bent space and time to move the ship faster than light." The crystal matrix focused quantum energy through dimensional fields. He stopped when he saw the confused look on Danny's face. "Your species does not have this technology." "No, we use fusion engines and jump drives. Much simpler." Danny walked around the destroyed drive, studying the damage. "But maybe that is good. Simple things are easier to fix." Crixon looked at Danny with what might have been hope. "You think you can repair this?" "No," Danny said honestly. "This is way beyond anything I understand. But I do not think we need to repair it. We just need to get your ship moving and keep your people alive." Danny opened his toolkit and pulled out a small scanner. It was crude compared to Zephyrian technology, but it worked. He began examining the ship's power systems, following cables and conduits through the walls. "Your power distribution is completely integrated," Danny said. "When the quantum drive failed, it took everything else with it. But look here." He pointed to a junction box. "These are the main power lines to life support. If we could bypass the damaged sections and feed power directly from our ship." "Impossible," Crixon said. "Human technology is not compatible with our systems. The power frequencies are different. The connection protocols will not match. It would be like trying to pour water into a crystal matrix." Danny grinned. "Good thing humans are experts at making things work that should not work." Over the next several hours, Danny and Crixon worked together to map out the Silent Wing's power system. The alien engineer was amazed by Danny's approach to problem solving. Where Crixon saw incompatible technologies that could never work together, Danny saw interesting puzzles to solve. "Your people think very differently," Crixon observed as Danny jury-rigged a power converter using parts from both ships. "We have to," Danny replied. "Our technology is not as advanced as yours, so we learn to improvise. Make do with what we have. Fix things that are supposed to be unfixable." On the Iron Horse, Jake and Lisa were having their own challenges. The ship's computer kept warning them about power drain and system overload. They were pushing their engines to generate enough electricity to power both ships. "Jake, we are running hot," Lisa warned. "If we keep this up much longer, we might burn out our own power systems." "How much longer does Danny need?" He said at least 6 more hours to rig the life support connections. Sam Rodriguez had been treating the Zephyrian crew members who were suffering from oxygen deprivation and system failures. The aliens' physiology was different from humans, but the basics were similar enough that his medical training helped. "The good news is that they can breathe our air," Sam reported. "The bad news is that 3 of them are in serious condition. If we cannot get their life support working soon, we might lose them." Back on the Silent Wing, Danny was working on a solution that would have horrified any proper engineer. He was connecting human power cables directly to Zephyrian control systems, using adapters he built from spare parts and electronic components he had torn out of broken equipment. "This should not work," Crixon said for the 10th time. "Probably not," Danny agreed. "But it might work long enough to keep your people alive." The breakthrough came when Danny realized that the Zephyrian ship's emergency power system was much simpler than their main systems. It was designed to work when everything else failed, which meant it was built to accept different kinds of power. Input. There, Danny said, connecting the last cable. Lisa, try feeding power through the emergency grid. On the Iron Horse, Lisa slowly increased power output. On the Silent Wing, lights began to flicker and come back on. Displays that had been dark for hours started showing information again. Most importantly, the life support systems began working. It is working, Crixon said in amazement. The air recyclers are online. Environmental control is stabilizing. How did you know to try the emergency systems? Because that is what I would have done, Danny replied. When you design something, you always build in a way to bypass the fancy stuff if it breaks. The more advanced the main system, the simpler the backup has to be. Over the communication system, they could hear cheering from the Zephyrian crew. Commander Veltar's voice came through clearly for the first time since the rescue began. Human ship Iron Horse, this is Commander Veltar of the Silent Wing. Your engineer has saved our lives. We are in your debt. Jake's voice replied from the Iron Horse. Glad we could help, Commander, but we are not done yet. We need to get both our ships to a station for proper repairs. That was when they discovered the next problem. The Silent Wing's engines were as damaged as everything else. The ship could maintain life support now, but it could not move under its own power. We will have to tow them, Lisa said. But Jake, they outweigh us by at least 3-1. Our engines were not designed for that kind of load. Danny looked at Crixon. How good are your structural integrity fields? Very good when we have power for them. Good enough to handle some stress? What are you thinking? Danny smiled. It was the same smile he got when he was about to try something that was either brilliant or completely insane. I am thinking we are going to find out just how tough both our ships really are. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his old chair on the bridge of the Iron Horse and drank coffee from a metal cup. The coffee was terrible, but it was hot, and it helped him stay awake during the long journey to Frontier Station 7. The Iron Horse was not a pretty ship. She was built for carrying cargo, not for looking good. The ship was 40 years old and had been repaired so many times that Jake sometimes wondered if any of the original parts were left. The hull was scratched and dented from years of hard work. The engines made noise and the lights flickered, but she always got the job done. Jake loved his ugly old ship. Jake, we are still on schedule to reach the station in 18 hours, said First Officer Lisa Murphy from her station. Lisa was smart and tough, the best pilot Jake had ever worked with. She had joined his crew 5 years ago when her military service ended. Good. The colonists need those medical supplies, Jake replied. He looked at the cargo manifest on his screen. They were carrying medicine, food, and replacement parts for the terraforming equipment on 3 different frontier worlds. Engineer Danny Torres climbed up from the engine room, wiping grease from his hands. Danny was young, but he knew machines better than anyone. He could fix anything with spare parts and creativity. The number 2 engine is making that weird sound again, but she will hold together until we reach the station. How weird? Jake asked. Weird enough that I want to replace the power coupling when we get there, but not weird enough to worry about. Right now, Jake nodded. Danny always told him the truth about the ship's condition. If Danny said they were okay, then they were okay. Medic Sam Rodriguez looked up from his book. Sam was the oldest member of the crew and had served on many different ships before joining the Iron Horse. He was quiet and calm, the kind of person you wanted around when things went wrong. I have been reading about the frontier colonies. Some of them have been hit hard by the supply shortages. That is why we are here, Jake said. Someone has to bring them what they need. The bridge was quiet for a while. The Iron Horse flew through space at a steady pace, not fast but reliable. Jake liked the quiet times between jobs. It gave him time to think and plan for the next mission. Then, Lisa's instruments started beeping. "Jake, I am picking up something on the long-range sensors. It looks like a distress signal." Jake put down his coffee and moved to look at her screen. The signal was very weak and broken up. "Can you clean it up?" Lisa worked at her controls for several minutes. Slowly, the signal became clearer. It was definitely a distress signal, but it was in a language the computer did not recognize. "Where is it coming from?" Jake asked. "About 6 hours away at full speed." "But Jake, that would take us off our route. We would be late delivering the medical supplies." Jake stared at the signal on the screen. Somewhere out there, people were in trouble and calling for help. He thought about the colonists waiting for their medical supplies. Then he thought about whoever was sending that distress signal. "Danny, how much extra fuel do we have?" Danny thought for a moment. "Enough for a 6-hour detour, but it would be close. We would have to fly at minimum power after the rescue to reach the station." The ship's computer voice interrupted them. "Captain Morrison, changing course to investigate the distress signal would violate company regulations. The delivery schedule must be maintained." Jake looked at the computer screen with annoyance. The shipping company had installed the AI to make sure he followed all the rules. It was supposed to help him make better decisions, but Jake thought it just got in the way. "Override the schedule," Jake ordered. "I cannot do that, Captain." "Company policy requires authorization from headquarters for any course changes." "Then do not log the course change," Jake said. "That would also violate regulations." Lisa looked at Jake with a grin. "Want me to accidentally break the navigation computer?" Jake thought about it for a few seconds. Then he smiled. "Do it." Lisa pressed a few buttons, and the computer's navigation display went dark. "Oops, looks like we will have to navigate manually until we can fix it at the station. Danny, give me full power to the engines." Lisa set course for that distress signal. As the Iron Horse changed course, Sam looked up from his medical kit. "Do we know what kind of ship we are looking for?" "No idea," Jake replied. "The signal is in an unknown language. Could be anybody." "Could be pirates trying to trick us," Danny pointed out. Jake had thought of that. There were pirates in this part of space who used fake distress signals to lure ships into traps. But the signal seemed real. There was something desperate about it that convinced him it was genuine. "If they are pirates, we will deal with it. But I am not going to ignore a distress call just because it might be dangerous." The crew prepared the ship for whatever they might find. Lisa checked the weapon systems, though the Iron Horse only had basic defensive guns. Danny made sure the engines were running at peak efficiency. Sam got his medical supplies ready in case there were injured people to treat. 6 hours later, they reached the coordinates of the distress signal. At first, they could not see anything except stars and empty space. Then Lisa's sensors detected something. "Jake, you need to see this," she said quietly. On the main screen, a ship appeared. It was huge, at least twice the size of the Iron Horse. The design was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It looked organic, like it had grown instead of being built. The hull was smooth and curved with no sharp edges anywhere. "That is not a human ship," Sam said. "No kidding," Danny replied. "Look at the size of that thing. It must be from one of the advanced alien species." Jake stared at the alien ship. It was beautiful, but clearly in trouble. There were no lights on the hull, and it was not moving. Lisa tried to contact them. Lisa worked at her communications panel for several minutes. Finally, she made contact. The alien voice that came through the speakers was musical and strange. The computer tried to translate, but could only manage a few words. "Help ... trapped ... dying ... Jake felt his stomach tighten. These beings, whoever they were in serious trouble. Danny scanned their ship. What kind of shape are they in? Danny ran his sensors over the alien vessel. The readings made him frown. Their main power is completely offline. Life support is failing. I am detecting at least 12 life signs aboard, but they are getting weaker. How long do they have? At this rate, maybe 24 hours. Probably less. Jake looked around at his crew. They were thinking the same thing he was. This was way beyond what the Iron Horse was designed to handle. They were a simple cargo ship with basic equipment. The alien ship was clearly built by a much more advanced civilization. But people were dying, and the Iron Horse was the only help available. Lisa, tell them we are here to help. Danny, figure out how we can get aboard their ship. Sam, get ready for alien casualties. As his crew got to work, Jake stared at the massive alien ship floating helplessly in space. He wondered what had happened to these beings and their advanced technology. He also wondered if his small, primitive ship could actually help them. One thing was certain. They were going to try. Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of the Silent Wing and watched the stars through the large viewing window. The mission had been perfect. Her crew had mapped 3 new star systems and found 2 planets that might support life. After 6 months in deep space, they were finally going home to Zephyr Prime. The Silent Wing was beautiful. The ship looked like a silver bird with smooth curves and no sharp edges. It was 300 meters long and built with the best technology the Zephyrian Empire could make. The engines were quiet, the computers were fast, and everything worked perfectly. Veltar was proud to command such a fine vessel. Commander, we will reach the jump point in 2 hours, said Navigator Deshi from her station. The young officer had blue skin like all Zephyrians, but her markings were still bright purple, showing she was not yet 30 years old. Good work, Deshi. Signal the crew that we will jump to hyperspace soon. Everyone should prepare for the yaw. Long sleep, Veltar replied. The journey home would take 3 weeks in hyperspace, and most of the crew would sleep through it. Chief Engineer Crixon walked onto the bridge. He was an old Zephyrian with faded markings and tired eyes. He had served on starships for over 60 years. Commander, I need to check the quantum drive one more time before we jump. The power readings have been a little strange today. Veltar nodded. Crixon was careful about everything. That was why she trusted him with her ship. Do what you need to do. We are not in any hurry. The engineer left the bridge and went down to the engine room. The quantum drive sat in the center of the room like a giant crystal. It hummed softly and glowed with blue light. This drive could bend space and time, letting the ship travel faster than light. It was the greatest achievement of Zephyrian science. Crixon ran his scanner over the drive and frowned. The readings were getting worse. Small cracks were forming in the crystal matrix. He had never seen anything like this before. The quantum drives were supposed to last for hundreds of years without problems. Engineering to bridge, he called. Through his communicator. Go ahead, Crixon, Veltar answered. Commander, I think we should delay the jump. I'm seeing some unusual readings in the drive core. Veltar thought for a moment. They had enough food and air for several more weeks. A short delay would not hurt. Very well. Take all the time you need. But time was something they did not have. 20 minutes later, alarms started ringing throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in every corridor. The smooth hum of the engines became a grinding noise that made everyone afraid. Veltar ran to her command chair. Report! The quantum drive is failing, Crixon shouted over the noise. The crystal matrix is breaking apart. I cannot stop it. The ship shook as the drive tried to tear itself apart. Sparks flew from control panels. The lights went out for a few seconds, then came back on dim and red. Emergency power only, called out the computer in its calm voice. Main power offline. Life support switched to backup systems. Veltar felt her stomach drop. Without main power, they could not jump to hyperspace. Without the quantum drive, they could not even move at normal speeds. They were trapped between star systems, far from any help. Damage report, she ordered. Crixon's voice came through the speakers, shaky and scared. The quantum drive is completely destroyed, Commander. The explosion damaged the backup engines, too. We have no propulsion at all. The power systems are failing fast. Science Officer Morden looked up from his station with wide eyes. Commander, we are in the empty space between the Kepler and Vega systems. The nearest inhabited planet is 40 light-years away. No ships travel through this area. Veltar closed her eyes and tried to think. The Zephyrian Empire had the best ships in the galaxy. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of younger races like the humans. How could this happen to them? Communications, send a distress signal on all frequencies, she ordered. Yes, Commander, replied Communications Officer Nexal. But his voice was not hopeful. The communication array was damaged in the explosion. I can only send weak signals. They will not travel very far. The ship grew quiet except for the sound. Of failing systems, everyone knew what this meant. They were alone in the dark between the stars. Their air would last maybe 2 days. Their food would last longer, but that did not matter if they could not breathe. Veltar looked around the bridge at her crew. These were good people who had trusted her to bring them home. Veshy was crying quietly. Morden stared at his instruments as if they might show him a miracle. Nexal kept trying to boost the communication signals, but the equipment was too damaged. Keep sending the distress signals, Veltar said in a strong voice. Someone will hear us. But even as she said it, she did not believe it. They were too far from main shipping routes. The only ships that might pass through this area were explorers or traders going to the frontier colonies. Most of those were human ships, and everyone knew humans had primitive technology. Their ships were slow, and their sensors were weak. Even if a human ship was nearby, they probably could not detect the distress signals. Veltar had always thought humans were interesting, but not very advanced. They had only learned to travel faster than light 30 years ago. Their ships looked crude and ugly compared to Zephyrian vessels. They used simple computers and basic engines. The Galactic Council treated them like children who needed to be. Watched and protected. Now, sitting in her broken ship in the cold darkness of space, Veltar realized she might have been wrong about many things. Technology meant nothing if it could fail when you needed it most. The beautiful silent wing was now just a tomb floating in the void. Commander, Nexal called out, I am detecting something strange. The sensors are picking up old radiation. Patterns. I think there was a gravity storm in this area recently. That might be what damaged our quantum drive. Can you tell how recent? Veltar asked. Maybe a few days ago. The radiation is still affecting our instruments. That explained the drive failure, but it did not help them now. Veltar looked out at the stars again. They looked cold and far away. Somewhere among those points of light was her home world, where her family was waiting for her to return. She would not give up hope. Not yet.